Okay guys, back at the Outer Circle. I recently made a couple of videos actually. One about my background with the heresy, how I got into it and why. And I also made one about painting and participation in the hobby and what defines the hobby. And today, well, that video in particular got me thinking, which led to today's video, where I want to talk about the divide between 30k and 40k players. And that's what I want to call it, because it's been long enough now that 8th/9th edition is far enough removed from the original 30k in 6th and 7th edition that there are actually many people playing who never participate in either system, and yet, as in they missed one of those systems and went with the other. And we're in a funny sort of place where the attitudes of many people in those systems have changed, or people have followed the crowd without kind of knowing why. And it's very interesting, probably some psychological thing in there to look at. But so the background for today's video, by the way, is a boring one. It's just a picture of all the out-of-stock 30k stuff over at Games Workshop, which clearly proves it sells. But no, I want to look at the fact that, well, 30k players and 40k players treat the other crowd very differently. So for 40k, I don't think they really cast too much of a thought for 30k players. They're there, they exist, whatever, and the occasional nice 30k miniature comes out and they like it, they can take it into their 40k armies. People who play Xenos Race in 40k tend to not care about 30k too much unless they're running a fan-made 30k edition rule set in Horus Heresy. But Horus Heresy players have a generally low opinion of 40k players. Now, I'm saying generally because there are always exceptions to the rule, but exceptions do not a rule make. And the background reasons behind this are many and varied. And doing the painting video really got me thinking, because I think painting is the biggest one. Of all the reasons, ignore the gameplay and all that kind of thing, I think painting is the standard by which 30k players measure people joining their community. And I'm not talking people joining the community and having really, really awesome painted armies. If they don't, they're not allowed in. No. It's a lot more insidious than that. And that's the word I'll choose, even though I am a 30k player, and I think I hold several of these views myself. But essentially, you can tell from the quality of one's army that comes into 30k how much of a crap they give about the 30k rule set. And I think the standard of having really well-painted armies has sort of become a way of testing people who come into the community to see if they're worthy of joining the community. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, I perceive it that way, is what some people do. Because if a person tends to not give a crap and they take a lot of gamey options in their army and they don't really paint their 30k armies, that's really going against the grain of 30k. And it's probably an easy way for people to figure out who shouldn't be in the community. It's used as a shorthand, really, to test people. And I find that intriguing. Because the more I think about it, the more I think it's true. Now, again, I could be completely wrong on this, but, I mean, think about it. We always talk about having narrative armies and wanting everything to be fully painted. And a big reason why many of us left 40k was because we weren't seeing either of those things. And, well, it can be kind of hard to tell if someone has a narrative army, but you can tell from the way people broach the subject of entering 30k as to what their intentions are. So someone who says, look, I'm really interested in 30k, what legion would suit me? And people ask them questions like, do you like close combat? And, okay, you like close combat, okay. Well, then it'd be probably like Blood Angels, World Eaters, Dark Angels, Emperor's Children. Do you like aggressive, or do you like really skillful, fast combat? Oh, I like aggressive. Well, okay, well, that's probably Emperor's Children out. It's probably Dark Angels out. So it's really Blood Angels and World Eaters. They're the aggressive armies, for combat in 30k. If someone goes down that route, fine. You can see what their intentions are. They are trying to find a force that suits their playstyle. Cool, great, respect it. But when a person comes in and they say, is this unit any good in 30k? That immediately it's the one that everyone in the room sort of, the person walks into the bar in the old Western saloon and the music stops playing and everyone turns their head and looks at the person who just walked in the bar. That's that moment for 30k. because people immediately go, okay, this person is looking at a unit going, do I get this or not? Oh, it kind of sucks. All right, I'm not getting it. As opposed to, hey, I like this unit. I'm just going to include it anyway or build it and paint it anyway because, it's usually a bad way to lead off. And, of course, you can't tell from people's army lists what their intentions are, although you can often guess. But when you see the paint job or the lack of paint job and the justification for it and the level of hobby committed to it, well, as an example I will use here, people who play Imperial Fists or Blood Angels in 40k and happen to want to be playing 30k. And rather than create a thematic force for 30k, they just use their old 40k army, full of the old school 40k Space Marines in the Mark 7 power armor, which is not historical to the period. Now, debates about what is and isn't allowed in 30k aside, using those miniatures in the first place is a bit of a red flag for heresy players. And again, a source of the elitism, because look around you. All the other 30k players, like especially the traitor players, have spent a lot of money buying a lot of resin and plastic miniatures for their traitor legions. I say traitor because predominantly you do not see traitor armies in 30k utilizing 40k plastics, because it doesn't look right for the time period to have Emperor's Children in full-on pink Chaos Space Marine armor with black trim, with crazy jagged zigzag trim going up and down all the legs. They're not at that point yet. Certain units like Cacophony, Noise Marines might be that way, but the Legion as a whole is not there yet, especially if you're playing like Werless or you're playing Isfahan 3, right? It doesn't work. And you can't put them into Mark 7 power armor. So those players have spent all this money and time and effort to create a thematic force that looks correct in order to tell the story, because that's where the fun is. And then other people come along and they've got their Mark 7 power armor for their Blood Angels, their Imperial Fists. So that's already a red flag. But then something even worse happens. All their markings and iconography is 40k. You see it on Terminators with Crux Terminatus. Well, the Crux Terminatus is made with a fragment of the Emperor's armor. How'd they get that fragment? Well, the Emperor, his armor is broken up into little pieces and put into those Crux Terminatus for 40k after he ends up in the Golden Throne, right? So, Crux Terminatus, that's not period authentic, but, oh, Macca, that's pedantic details. It is, but not to a 30k player. You see, people in 30k tend to retain that kind of information, and they look at it and they go, I'm fine with you using that armor. I'm fine with the 40k Rhino, a 40k Predator, hell, probably even a 40k Land Raider. But when you have 40k iconography, unit markings and tactical and chapter markings from 40k, and 40k chapter symbols, like great example, is Dark Angels with Broken Swords iconography. In 30k, well, the sword gets broken most of the way through the heresy. So why would Dark Angels have that? In fact, why would you see a Dark Angels army in Mark 7 power armor and painted green? You wouldn't. And yet, some people try to do that in Horus Heresy, and immediately, it's the signal to all the players around them that either they're taking the piss, or, in fairness, they're proxying and they're trying to test out the system. One is acceptable, one is not, to the general community. And there is a general train of thought in the community. And whilst it does not apply to everyone, it does not mean that it's not there. And it is far more widespread, I think, than any individual element is alone. So you can be a person who thinks that Mark 7 power armor in 30k is a-okay, but you're going to be in the minority on that. And there's a wider community that thinks fully painted models that are period authentic is the way to go. So, if you wanted to do Blood Angels and Imperial Fists in 30k and you wanted to use some Mark 7 and you wanted to bullshit your way and say it's a Siege of Terra Force, fine, go for it. But you probably want to add in some other power armor, like some Mark 3, some Mark 4, some Mark 6, add a bit of other stuff in there to vary it up a bit. Just making the whole army in Mark 7, no, it's kind of frowned upon. Especially if you're using like Death Company markings and such, because they don't exist yet in 30k, and it sticks out. Now again, if you're testing the system out, you're just proxying a bit for a few games before you figure out what you want to buy, hey, respect it. Fair, do it. But if you've been playing games for like 5 years in the system and you're still just rocking your 40k army, it's an injustice to the community around you, basically, because their hobby is just as important to them as yours is to you. And when you rock up and show them the disrespect of not putting in the effort they have, that's not very nice. And you can't expect them to be accepting of what you've done if you're not willing to meet them at their standard. You can't just expect everyone else to lower themselves down. And I get it, some people don't like painting, they just want to play, or some people don't want the expense of 30k or something. Maybe the hobby isn't for them. You know, it is a very expensive hobby. I know it's a very elitist statement to make, but it's true. There is a similar hobby called 40k, you know? Or, even better idea, don't limit yourself, okay? Find the community that will accept that and own it. Own that opinion. Own that style of play. Find that community that likes to play that way, that doesn't care if you proxy or use the wrong armor or anything like that, and play within that community. Perfectly fine. Perfectly respectable thing to do. But trying to go out into that wider community and do it, not so respectable. And these are the trends that I don't think are true to myself alone. I think this is the full-on 30k mindset. And so a lot of 30k players, as I said, are using it as the test. What's the army made out of? And the first thing they'll notice is paint. The next thing they'll notice is what composition the army is. So take Ben Greaves' quote-unquote Sons of Horus army. I'll say his name, I don't care, because you know exactly what I'm referring to. It was featured in a White Dwarf article. He had a Sons of Horus army. It was full of 40k miniatures, painted in the Sons of Horus paint scheme. It had some Stormcast Eternals and stuff in there, but I don't really care about that. I don't think I mentioned it in the 2 videos I did on the subject, and sad that it had to be 2, but anyway, go back and watch them if you're curious. Anyway, the army was showcased in White Dwarf by the company, saying it was an example of 30k army, but it wasn't. It was full 40k units, and it was played by him not for 30k, but for 40k, using 40k rules. And I didn't attack the person, I attacked that concept, that the company who showcases and makes the miniatures was showcasing it incorrectly, because they were ascribing it values that it did not actually possess. And it was unfair to the hard work and legacy of the 30k team. And this also goes for miniatures like Zephon, Dominion Zephon, the new Blood Angels character with jump pack from Forge World. Because Dominion Zephon is jumping around in the completely wrong armor marks, and people keep trying to defend it. Stop. I don't care for the defenses, guys. Yeah, give me your opinions by all means. I welcome it every video. But you can't just say, oh, well, he could have had different armor. Look, we have 2 fixed points in time. During the Siege of Terra and just before the Siege of Terra at the end of the war in the Webway. He's described in one set of armor at the end of one, and a new set of armor at the start of the other. And neither of those descriptions match. And you want me to believe he's got a 3rd set of armor in the middle there that he's wearing. And then on top of that, it's also incorrect in every aspect conceivable, including his bionics, which is a very important fact about the character. And then I point out the paint job, and people go, well, you can't judge the paint job. Eddie, you can paint it however you want. Yes, I can paint it however I want. But you know who should have painted it correctly? Games Workshop, because they're the one who created the miniature, and if they can't show the attention to detail the system requires, what does that say, and what's the message it sends to the community? Well, the community's already digging in their heels in regards to the quality they expect. When the company does something as incompetent as that, it's not a case of, well, you can repaint it your way. The community looks at it and goes, well, that's very unprofessional. And they lose respect for the company. So much so that the company has to ask themselves, geez, why are so many people recasting our products and not using our rules for the system anymore? That could be the answer. And really, when you can't paint a character correctly, that is the message it sends. That we do not give a crap about this system, we just paint it how we feel. And while people may say, I don't care if it's, the wrong armor color or the wrong paint job or whatever, that is important because, like I said, if you had green Thousand Suns or red Ultramarines, and it wasn't just some alternate scheme presented in a codex as, you could paint things this way, which is fine, I suppose. If it was the promo artwork, like a red or purple Kato Sicarius on his box. What about Marnius Kelgar? He's painted rainbow, and one of his bodyguards is painted pink and the other one's painted lime green. Wouldn't that look like trash on the box? It probably would, right? So it brings me back around to this point. Horus Heresy players have a built-in elitism. It's true. They're the most gatekeepy of the hobbies. I find the Lord of the Rings players are the most opposite in that regard. Middle-earth players are just like... They're the people who are literally thrown open the gates of the city and they're just saying, everyone, come in, come in, come in. And there is just no quality standard there. They just have loved every release from Games Workshop, no matter how pathetic or bad or terribly priced. Sorry for the generalization, guys, but it's true. I have plenty of comments attacking me on videos that show it. Not attacking my arguments, attacking me. Big difference. And, of course, the Heresy ticks along with its little elitist bubble, saying, paint your stuff before you join our community. Why? Because we don't like people from 40k coming across and bringing all the bad 40k attitudes with them that we came to this system to get away from in the first place. And paint schemes are the first symbol of that. The minute you see that poorly painted army, or non-painted army, or completely incorrectly painted army, like I said, green Dark Angels, immediately the eyebrow gets raised. You go in a little closer and you see it's full of 40k models. And then you go in a little closer and it's full of 40k weapons and markings. And this is a 40k army. And then you see that it's full of like Cordis dreadnoughts or something, and they're all just the same box dreadnought from Forge World, just 6 of it repeated. Oh, sorry, no, it'll be the Contemptor dreadnought, the rigid monopose one from Games Workshop, the worst model in the Space Marine range. It'll be like 6 of that together, and it's all Corduses or something, or it's with the Castellan HQ, and immediately 30k players like, oh no, this is a WAAC army, isn't it? This is going to be horrid to play against. And the guy's playing like a friendly Zone Mortalis with 6 Contemptor dreadnoughts. That can happen, and it's a terrifying prospect for the community because they don't want to see that. Another thing the community doesn't like is 40k. And I really mean that. They don't like the game. Very important distinction to make, because 40k the game it's like garlic to a vampire. Because Heresy players like their strategy and their tactics as deep and meaningful as possible. Yep, there's some janky rules in there and some stuff that needs fixing. I myself can rattle off like 10 off the top of my head. Namely, the first one being Psychic Phase. Janky needs to be fixed, but what 40k does is not the solution that 30k is chasing. There's rumours going around about dreadnoughts having toughness and wounds and such in 30k. Not entirely sure how I feel about it. I feel I don't like it. But I want to see if that comes true and then try it before I say it's terrible. But, of course, Games Workshop in their infinite wisdom forget what the 30k player wants. It's why they can't give a roadmap to us and say, hey, keep an eye out later in this year, there'll be a big Heresy release. And we mean an actual box game. So they can't bring themselves to say that. They don't respect the community enough. Their own house of cards they've built up is too important to them to risk showing the community they've alienated their hand. And it's a big problem. It really is. Because they will do things like add wounds or change rules in 30k, ignoring the fact that 30k players like what they've got. And like I said, there are janky rules that need fixing. But people on the whole are not complaining that, I really think Contemptor Dreadnoughts should be toughness 7. You should be able to hurt a Contemptor frontally with bolt guns. Yeah, that's fine. No. People don't care about that. That's trivial. It was like in 40k, when 8th edition rolled around, they gave everyone individual unit movement values. No one ever complained that 40k sucked because the movement was all 6 inches for infantry. Nobody cared. Wasn't an issue. So they need to target the actual issues. And again, it all leads back to that same thing. Why are 30k players a bit elitist? Because they don't want that. They've seen what that does. They've seen it. Look at what 40k is today. And look at the exodus from 40k. And think about the reasons behind that exodus. How many of those people went to 30k? And why 30k players want to keep what they've got pure? For better or worse, there is a definite reasoning and mindset to it. Anyway, that's all from me. I want to know what you guys think below. As I said, keep the personal attacks to yourselves and don't go out and target people I've named in the video because they didn't do anything wrong. That's all from me. look after yourselves, take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.